Welcome back to On the Ball. Today, we're really excited to have Ali Upshaw with us, joining us from New Mexico, where she is one of the greatest cross-country runners in the history of that state. I was reading your accomplishments both at University of New Mexico and in high school. So let's say in high school, you were a two-time cross-country state champion, two-time basketball state champion, valedictorian of your high school, three-time Navajo Times Runner of the Year. Uh, Pretty amazing. And then you kept it up in college as a two-time All-Region, Mountain West All-Conference, Mountain West Scholar Athlete, Academic All-Conference. So it sounds like you're somebody who's pretty driven and determined person. Ali, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Just to get a better sense of, who you are and where you are, like tell us like what your day's been like today. Where are you joining us from, and what stage is the cross country season at right now, or track season, and what are you studying in school?
Yeah, so I'm here in Albuquerque. I'm a junior here currently. Because of the COVID season, I've gotten another year of eligibility. So right now, my cross country year is I'm a sophomore. And so, yeah, I go to school here. I don't live too far away from here. I'm actually from Fort Defiance, Arizona, which is on the Navajo Nation. And so I'm from there. I'm a community member from there. And yeah, I go to school. I study community health education and am minoring in Native American studies. And right now, we're in the indoor season, so I haven't been running too much only because I'm kind of getting over an injury right now. But I ran like the first race of the season, and then for now I'm just kind of recovering and getting ready for the outdoor. Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, great. And it sounds like that you mentioned growing up on the Navajo reservation and reading about lessons from your grandparents about the importance of running and just the cultural significance of that, the Navajo Nation. And could you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's something very special to me. Um, as a native student athlete here at UNM, I think things are a bit complex in terms of, mainstream education, different from, what I was taught back home. And I think being here at UNM has kind of taught me, my about myself and like my identity as a Navajo person. And so, yeah, like just going off what you said, those stories from my grandparents and those lessons, they're something that I've always carried throughout my educational and running journey. Um, so yeah, I was taught at a young age that, running is very sacred. And as Navajo teachings we are told to, run very early in the morning and greet the holy deities and, give thanks in that way. And, a lot of those ceremonies that are given, those stories are and those lessons are told within those ceremonies as well. So, yeah, those are the kind of things that I was first introduced to running as. So, mhm.
Okay. And were you introduced to running at a very early age? It sounds like your mom was your coach in high school. So was this something that was just a part of being a part of your family as running came with it, or something you came to later in life?
Yeah, well, I've been introduced to running at a very young age. Yeah, like as you mentioned, my mom was actually my high school cross country coach. She was actually coached by my grandpa in high school. And then my uncles ran and then my auntie ran. So, it was kind of given. No, I'm just kidding. But uh yeah, but I guess I wasn't really competitively involved at a young age. It was kind of like, just running here and there with my mom. And that's pretty much how I was introduced to it was, through, like I said, through the stories of my grandparents. Their stories of their children and like my uncles and my mom.
And you mentioned the I took it from your answer about the difference between like where you grew up and where you're going to college, and some of the differences in maybe the way that the schools are, just the culture that you've come into at the on campus, University of New Mexico. What are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed, and where you've you mentioned that you've grown, but I imagine that you're trying to change the environment that you've entered in college in positive ways also. So help us understand what it's like to come from that Navajo reservation onto the campus at University of New Mexico. And what was different for you, and what have you been trying to accomplish on campus just in a couple of years?
Yeah, well, I guess being here, my first initial thoughts were coming into like a Division 1 atmosphere. The University of New Mexico cross country team is actually, a very, you know, it's a really, really great team. And so like coming in, like I knew that I would have to live up to those standards. And coming from like a small town, a small school, and stepping into that type of environment was very different for myself, especially because there's a lot of international athletes on the team as well.
Hmm.
And just being here, it was kind of like, the my first initial goal were just to, do the best I can and try to make the national team. And those were my first goals throughout my first year. And, as I've um, adapted and like grown into the environment, I felt it like I felt like a lot of people, um, I don't know how to say it. It was kind of like an environment where it was so new and people were seeing me in that position in which not many Navajo students get to experience. And I think that's what a lot of people um, like appreciate and support. And so I think like that was one of the driving forces of me to, keep doing what I was doing. And especially, as um, being a Navajo athlete, there are like our native student in general, there's a lot of um, movements and social uh, ideas about, different things that are in the news, like, MMIW,
Hmm.
Orange Shirt Day, that, like hinder, emotional and physical well-beings. And I think that's something that I was like, I could never ignore because coming from my community, that was just something that we always knew at a young age. And we could never step away from those feelings. And so whenever like I would encounter these like emotions, I had no like um what's the word? uh Coping strategy.
Hmm.
Instead of like it was just running. And it wasn't until, Orange Shirt Day that I felt like, you know what, I have to do something. And, using my platform as a Navajo athlete, I wanted to, be there for my community on that day as like being from a Navajo boarding school survivor, um, the generations of that, I just really wanted to, do something for my grandpa and those who, um, didn't even make it back from some of those boarding schools. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So you're talking about, feeling um, the presence of a platform as a student athlete, feeling the weight of these heavy issues, and, deciding you're going to use that platform, which on top of everything else, you're trying to study, you're trying to succeed as a student athlete. There's a lot on your plate already. But I think, from a distance, what you've done with Orange Shirt Day is, a very significant thing, a good thing in the world. And for those who aren't familiar with it, I'm sure a lot of the viewers are not familiar with Orange Shirt Day. Can you tell us what that day is and the larger issue that it's educating on and addressing?
Yeah, so in general, Orange Shirt Day is basically a day that's been dedicated to the discussion, awareness, and remembrance of Native boarding schools and residential school survivors. And in a lot of these boarding schools, Native people like suffered um, and experienced intense emotional trauma, and it's left a traumatic legacy. So there's been over like 300 boarding schools reported in the across the US and Canada. And so a lot of these of schools, there's been a lot of uncovering of unmarked graves of children being like in the news now. And so I guess the main question is like why orange and why September 30th? So, Orange Shirt Day was basically um, about mainly about Phyllis Webstead, who was like a 6-year-old girl. And when she was about to start residential school, she was excited to go to school, and her grandma bought her an orange shirt. And so when she got there, the orange shirt was taken away. And so that shirt is a reminder and symbol of things that were taken from Native kids at that young age. So when we talk about September 30th, we use that as a day to um, remember those survivors and um, use it as a day of discussion and um, kind of like a discussion that, is probably makes people uncomfortable, but it's a discussion that needs to be had across Indian country. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Those uncomfortable discussions are the most important ones. And I know that September 30th is sort of a back to school time, and that's a time where a lot of these Native kids were taken from their families, never to be seen again. And so earlier this year, when you decided to earlier this academic year, it looked like you had a press conference there, University of New Mexico, to raise awareness of this day. How did that come about? How'd you have the idea to do it? What was the response to your remarks that day?
Yeah, well, I guess it was kind of short notice, to be honest. I brought it up to my coach like 2 days we were about to leave, and he had a good idea to, go to the press conference with him and kind of talk about, what I talked about and um, let others know that we're going to be there in support of Orange Shirt Day, warming up in orange shirts and all that stuff. So I guess, yeah, I kind of didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for it. I kind of just showed up and the cameras were there, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I honestly did not know what a press conference even was. But yeah, I guess it was like a good opportunity. I think a lot of people from back home appreciated it, and I think it was also streamed on KOB4 as well.
Okay.
So a lot of people got to see it like early in the morning back home.
That's great. So really never been a part of a press conference or even really knowing what it was, but you made quite a statement. And your opening statement you delivered in Navajo, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it sounds like you're interested in the effect you have as a role model for kids. And I'm sure delivering it in the language was very meaningful. And so it looked like even the football program there at the University of New Mexico got behind the campaign. Is that right?
Yeah, they did.
And they wore logos and special jerseys. And so you mentioned that your grandfather was a survivor of these boarding schools. What do you know about your own family's history with the boarding schools?
Well, I do believe that you know, dating back to federal Indian policy, I was actually doing a lot of research on this for one of my classes. And a lot of like the experiences for Navajo people on the Navajo reservations had very different reactions to boarding schools in general. And a lot of what was being said was kind of like encouraging to go to these boarding schools only because of the the adaptations that were being made in order to have a good life and to support ourselves. So I guess um, my grandpa being a part of that generation in which they were sent to boarding schools was kind of like a thing in which they were kind of encouraged to do so in order to better themselves and live up to um, like this standard of well-being, I guess, among, like um Western perspectives, I guess
Hmm.
to say.
Right.
Um, but I guess I would say that my grandpa, um, even though I say that my grandpa's been through a lot, and like, Navajo people have been through a lot. We are like a lot more than our struggles. We are a lot more than our issues. And I like to end things like I say like there's all this struggle, there's all these challenges, and I like would want to say something on the better side,
Hmm.
and that is that, it's these these stories that are being told are a celebration of survivance.
Hmm.
And my grandpa is somebody that I look up to very deeply, being as that he's been through all this. He's taught me so many things like about my culture and my traditions as a Navajo person, and teaching my mom those things and having it carried over to her, teaching her philosophy. I just think that like running has always been part of our family, and um, I think what accounts for those struggles, we also um, use those as lessons when we um, go to school and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting about the turning the sort of the typical portrayal of the struggles. The flip side of that is persistence, and survival and success. And running seems like a perfect embodiment of that, like
Mhm.
and succeeding as a runner as you do. And I saw that you also draw inspiration from other Native American athletes in the past. And is it true that you watch a film about Billy Mills, to get pumped up to run?
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's like another thing from my grandpa. My grandpa was like always just on it. He was like, you need to watch this movie. You need to watch this movie. And so he always used to make comparisons between like Billy Mills and like Steve Prefontaine. And
Mhm.
he would just throw in stuff like just other nonsense stuff. And I'd be like, okay, grandpa. So that's where I've gotten like all of my motivational film is from him.
All right. And then another example of success for you and is the name, image, and likeness deal that you are a part of, historic agreement. Tell us about that and what's significant about your NIL deal.
Yeah, so I guess the most special thing about this NIL deal is that it's um it's a partway to my adventures. So the whole purpose around it was to celebrate Indigenous pride. And so To My Adventures is a tax exempt company here in Albuquerque. So they're heavily involved with the UNM program, and they also sponsor the UNM pit where most of the games are held.
Hmm.
And so they decided to reach out to a lot of the native students and athletes here at UNM. So Natalia Chavez, Jalen Bates, and myself, those two are a part of the basketball team. And so they're also a part of tribal communities as well. So they decided to reach out and partner with us to, have our own merchandise line with UNM. And so I guess the cool part about it is that it's native custom made, it's native designed. So like we have our own tribal print on the shirts with the sport that we're um, a part of. So I guess like one thing I really like about it is that there's not much cross country gear sold here.
Right.
So my family gets to like have that, and they get to have like the tribal print with it and everything as well. So I guess it's really special to me because it makes me feel like not that I belong here, but that like there's something that my community can have that relates to them, and like this shirt when they wear it, it's like a part of their community in a way in which one of like their members is a part of.
Okay. And so if people want to support you, can they go online and find these shirts, or how do people purchase them?
Yeah, so these shirts are on a website. I think Lobo Web Apps might have posted it on their Twitter and Facebook accounts.
Mhm.
I also have the link like in my bios and my social media accounts
Okay.
as well. So that's there. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. But I know a couple days ago there was a game hosted here at the pit and they were also selling there, but I don't but the store ends in like 2 days, so
Oh, okay. All right. The pit's somewhere I always wanted to go. You know, as a college basketball fan, you always hear about how loud it is in there and what a great environment. I know they've hosted a lot of NCAA tournament games there over the years too. Um, so you mentioned your major and interest in public health, and what are you thinking about doing after college? Do you have thoughts about what you'd like your career to be?
Um, well, for sure, probably go into higher education. I would really like to, get involved with like nonprofit organizations that are heavily involved with the community back home. I think like there's a lot of good nonprofit organizations that have been developed, and I think I some of the things that they're committed to, I really want to be a part of. And, probably getting more experience in that field here in Albuquerque. I think that's what I've like have been looking forward to. Of course, professional running wise, I it just all depends on where I stand.
Right.
I've just been, try not to pressure myself to, do better in any way, but just wherever it goes, it goes.
Okay, we'll be watching. For non-natives who are interested in, Orange Shirt Day or the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, or the adoption case, I guess that's up before the Supreme Court here. What are the best ways that uh, non-natives can learn more about what the issues are, or get involved, or is there a desire for more people to get involved, or just to kind of stay out of things that don't, directly affect them? What's what's your thought on that? And what should people know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think um I think a lot of the question like among non-natives and natives is like where are we going to go from here? In accordance with like a lot of the things that native people have been voicing their concerns about. Um I think like a lot of because like these are words that like I didn't come up on my own with. Like as I mentioned, there's a lot of people that have been involved with these types of things, like Native Women Running Organization, Jordan Marie Daniels, who is a part of the Rising Hearts organization. They provide a lot of insight on like where and what you can do to be, a better person, a better ally to the Native community. And I think that goes along with listening and being mindful of these types of issues. And, I guess like awareness is important. And I think like as long as we keep having these discussions among each other, I think that's where people will realize, their actions towards things. Because, there is a lot of naive and ignorance among, the general population towards these things. And I've witnessed it, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, like I mentioned, but I think these discussions are still very important. And I think if non-natives want any like to help in any way, I think being learning how to be a good ally might be, a, a course of solution,
Mhm.
really.
And for other student athletes watching this, whether they're Native American or not, what have you learned about just using your platform as an athlete? I feel that all athletes have a platform, whether they choose to use it or not, for better or worse. I think people just look up to athletes, and athletes tend to have popularity in their schools or a larger social media following, but there's a lot of pressure that can come with that too. If you open yourself up to criticism, or to misunderstandings from people, or even finding the time to use your platform when you have other worthy things going on in your life too. So, what advice would you have to student athletes about, choosing to use that platform? And then if you do, the best way to do it based on your experience?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think when I was first getting involved with conversations like these, my parents, especially my grandma, was very skeptical about me, opening up myself to this large platform because, like you said, that it is open to criticism and, a lot of the times jealousy and hatefulness towards people outside looking in. And I think, um, a part of me when I first got involved with, like, because I have like a TikTok account.
Mhm.
So like I say, I talk about different things as well on my account as well. And accordance with like the native community and things like that, is that it is kind of scary, being out in the open like that. And I think the most important advice that I have is to remember who you are and where you come from is the most important thing because where you come from is what is going to guide you, and those from what you've learned from your family is really is what's going to ground you in all your work that you're going to do, and knowing your purpose as well, because that's what's going to keep you going, and being mindful to constructive criticism because I'm learning as I'm going, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's definitely like I'm still learning about um things in my own community from other community members as well. Because, like I said, I've only known like oral knowledge of things. And so I think that's what I have to say
Okay.
about that.
Well, that's terrific. Well, I know you're a busy student athlete, so I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to do this interview. Sounds like people can follow you on social media if they're interested in learning more. But Ali Upshaw, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck to you the rest of this spring season. If you're anywhere near Nashville for a competition, definitely let us know. But good luck to you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.